Hello and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism, a podcast about urbanism and stuff. I'm your host, Alex Williams, and I'm joined by two delightful, wonderful, and awesome, incredible people. First, we have a regular, Nic Laporte. Say hi.
Hello, everybody.
And today we've got Jamie joining us from Urban Avenue. Say hi, Jamie.
Hello, how's it going, guys?
It's going so well. We're stoked to have you. We've got in the live chat, I see we've got Skitch, Austin, and Jen. So a few regulars joining us. Austin says, "What's up?" And Jen says, "Good afternoon, all." Skitch says, "Square." I think that's an emoji that's just not coming through on my screen. But we're excited. We've got some interesting stories to share today. Oh, it was a salute emoji. I guess it just didn't come through on my screen. Yeah, Nic, you have an update for us. Please share.
Oh, do I, ladies and gentlemen.
It's the most wonderful time
Of the year. You know what that means, folks? It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's October, which means that the ladies are coming out. They're going to get their pumpkin spice lattes. It means I can watch my annual series, which is called Harry Potter. It's fantastic. You should check it out. But it also means it gets a bit colder, which means my favorite thing starts to happen. People idling their fucking cars. It's too early in the show to really drop a big hard F-bomb. This is something I've complained about before. Like I had, you remember. Do you remember, Alex, when I showed all the B-roll?
I remember. Okay. Yeah.
It's getting colder. It was 9 degrees this morning. I was going to work. Obviously, what do I see? Tons of cars just idling, nobody in them. Just like, this is a PSA, just sending it out there to the world. Guys, it's still illegal to idle your cars when it gets colder. Just like wanted to throw that out there. That's all. That's it.
Yeah. And you know, it is interesting. I think a lot of the time people aren't doing these things because they're malicious. They're doing these things because they want to be comfortable, right? Because it's easy.
Yep.
And I think this is another reason why a variety of options are important, so that we have fewer people feeling the need to idle their cars. We have fewer people as far as built infrastructure goes. We need better built infrastructure so that we have fewer people parking in places where it is dangerous or unsafe for them to be parked, whether for their own safety or somebody else's. I saw somebody parked in a painted bike lane the other day when there was plenty of parking in the regular parking lane, and I took a video of it, and they actually came up beside me as I was recording it, and I was like, "Oh, hi!" and of course, like this person isn't a bad person. They're not looking to harm anybody parking their vehicle there. They were doing a job. It was a work vehicle, and they saw themselves as working efficiently. And the thing is, we're all caught up in our own little worlds, and that's why proper built infrastructure is so important. So
absolutely.
I'll just kind of add to your anti-idling comment there, Nic, and pile on. But before we get into our news stories, let's hear a little bit from our guest, Jamie. Maybe you have some thoughts on this, but also just give us a little brief intro, where you are and where you're coming from.
I was just going to say, Nic, we have the opposite problem. People are doing it because it's so hot. They'll just idle their cars to warm it up before they even get in. Because if you get in a car in Phoenix, you have to touch a steering wheel that's on fire. So people
seems more reasonable,
yeah.
Actually.
Well, I like to do the old-fashioned way. You just get gloves. Like, we used to be a city where you would get mittens before you would drive.
Whoa.
Yeah,
that's too much.
Like
that's too much.
The glove box was literally a mitten glove box.
But it's oven mitts.
Oven mitts, yeah, literally.
Yeah.
My name's Jamie Truffin. I grew up in Phoenix. I've lived in Phoenix pretty much my whole life. I technically was born in Chicago, but that was like 2 years of my life, so it doesn't count. We're just going to not consider that my growing up environment. So Phoenix is really where I grew up. I lived. I serve on a couple of boards. I serve on Urban Phoenix Project, Phoenix Spokespeople. I just started my own neighborhood association that I'm leading, and then I'm also a vice chair for the Vision Zero that we have in Phoenix. That's my cat's tail that keeps coming in the camera. But yeah, so I'm very focused on urbanism and a big community advocate and advocating for these things that we see in our cities.
Yeah, I love that. I think what's been really great to see is people being more involved in their cities and less so online. I've actually talked to a few other urbanist content creators on on YouTube and Instagram and stuff. And a few of them have said, actually, I'm doing less online now because I'm so focused on the stuff happening in my area. And I think that is fantastic. I'd like to say that's the only reason I haven't been making as many videos, but it's also it's just not a priority as much for me.
It's very time consuming.
It is super time consuming. And then you're talking about being on all of these boards, right? Can you tell us, so you said you started up a neighborhoods association. I know we're going to ask more questions of Jamie later in the show, but I do just want to hear real quick, what is that process like and what are you hoping to achieve with that?
So in our city for Phoenix, and a lot of cities have their own version of this, they'll have like neighborhood services department, but you can register and create like with a couple community members. City of Phoenix used to allow you to be a nonprofit and register with the City of Phoenix as a neighborhood, but you can't do that anymore, so it's a little bit more tricky. But if you get a couple neighbors together, depending on the requirements of your city, you can start a neighborhood association. And you can see if there's already previously established neighborhood associations in your area. And if there's not one in your own area, look at other ones and ask for advice on like how to get one started. That's what I did. There is some folks a little bit north of us that have helped lead and start neighborhood associations because I had no idea what I was doing. So I went ahead, started doing that. I created a Discord because I feel like Discord is just a great way for neighbors to just constantly be in communication. And I'm in a little bit more of an urban environment, so I was surprised by the reactions people had when they came into the meeting, and they were very supportive of like, we need leading pedestrian intervals downtown. They want a Trader Joe's, but it's just like hearing all the stuff that they want, and it's very pedestrian and urbanist focused. And yeah, it is an urban area. I just didn't expect that firsthand when I was going into starting a neighborhood association.
That's fantastic. I'm really excited to hear how that goes for you. And I also think a lot of the times people hear neighborhood association or community association or maybe HOA, and they think certain things about what that is and what it does. But ultimately, it is a form of local governance and a way that we can engage with our neighbors in making our homes and our cities better places to live. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes, and we will have more questions for you on that later on. I want to invite the people in the live chat here. Submit your questions for Jamie. Anything that you're curious about Jamie and his Urban Avenues project. And we'll add that to the list for later in the show. But for now, let's get into this first story here. And this comes from The Verge. And actually, Jen shared this in our Discord server, which you can join if you want to go to patreon.com/radiofreeurbanism. For $1 a month, you can support us, join our Discord server, and join our live chat here during the show. But this is really, really exciting. And the headline is, now searches on Google Flights will suggest Amtrak train rides too. And this is something we've talked about on the show, needing to integrate the way that we plan trips with multimodal options. And often when we think multimodal, we're thinking like, oh, I might bike to the train and then take the train somewhere. But this can involve planes, trains, automobiles, cycling, unicycling, however you want to get around. So I'm really excited to see that this is becoming an option. And I'm optimistic that we might start to see something like this across Canada, but then also specifically in Alberta. I would love to see an option for people in Edmonton if they're booking a trip somewhere, that they'd be able to book a trip and it says, oh, well, just take the train from Edmonton down to Calgary and fly out from there. What do you guys think of this, Nick?
This is great. I love this because so often when you go to book a trip somewhere, you can often overlook these things, right? So it's really good to see that in there. And not only is this just an option for people who might want to take it, but it also gets into the mind share of people when they go and look at taking a trip somewhere. It might just pop up more often and they'll realize that it is an actual option for them to take, other than just saying, oh, I'm going to drive or I'm going to fly. It's going to be in there and people are going to start to recognize that this is an actual way, legitimate way for us to travel.
Yeah. Jamie?
Yeah, I think it's also, people can see that even if it's just one way, you can take a train and it's cheaper. And then maybe you fly back another day. We actually recently did that when we were going to Chicago. I had to do the research manually because Google didn't have this at the time. But we were looking, and it was a holiday weekend. From what I understand, and I was looking at the prices for Amtrak, they don't really surge price when it comes to like a holiday. It's like it's still the same price. It was a very affordable rate. So we did a one-way from Flagstaff, Arizona, all the way to Chicago, and it was very affordable. And then we flew back just because it was cheaper to fly back after all the holiday stuff. So I think it's a good way for people also to combine the efforts of like flight and train. So you're not just using one mode of transportation, but you might be able to come out ahead with utilizing a train service and a flight.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of ties into something Austin says here in the live chat. He says, Amtrak, does anyone know if it will combine flight and train? And from what I'm looking at on the screenshot here in the article, it doesn't look like that's the case, but it has down in the bottom, it says, consider taking the train, and then it has a couple train options as well as the ticketing price. In this specific example where it's New York to Washington, D.C., it costs more money, but maybe that's something we can work on. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this, and I do love the idea of being able to actually like properly combine these trips. Like, I need to go somewhere, can I look at, similar to how it gives you ideas with different layovers, right? It can say, oh, you have to fly from Calgary to Toronto, then to Ottawa, or you can fly direct from Calgary to Ottawa. It would be cool if I was able to look at, on the same page, I can fly to Toronto and then take the train from Toronto to Ottawa. What will that do to the time? What will that do to my comfort, availability, the ticket cost, and then, of course, the environmental considerations, which is noted by Google, saying more climate friendly than flying. So, yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think for most people, if it's at least a similar price and it's not taking too much longer, considering the whole trip, I think most people would be willing to take it.
Yeah, and Skitch says here, it would be cool if it told you to take a train to somewhere in between and then take a cheaper flight than what you'd get if you flew the whole way. So that's another option, because not everywhere flies to everywhere, right? And depending what airport you're near and what that airport charges as far as fees for the airline and for air travel, all of these things can kind of factor in. And it's nice, like, it can be fun for an individual to kind of like gamify the system a little bit. I talk about that a little bit in my most recent video, right? Like, it's kind of fun to be like, but like if I went here first and then there, or maybe what if I flew here or drove here and then I had to pay for parking there, but because I get the cheaper flight, then like, it can be kind of fun, but it would be nice if the internet just did all of that legwork for you, right?
Yeah,
even
totally.
I would even go so far to say if they could even suggest one-way car rentals, even to get to those spots, because a lot of these airline companies or airports have a bunch of cars in one area, but they need to get them to other places, and they'll like discount them if you do a one-way trip from, let's say, like Phoenix to LA. I've gotten really discounted rental cars because I don't own a car, so occasionally I'll rent it because LAX has such cheaper flights that I was able to rent a car, and it was cheaper than actually flying there, even with gas, to go to LA to catch a flight. On the way back, though, I did catch a train somehow from LA to Phoenix, which is...
Really?
Yeah, it was $30 to go from LA to Phoenix.
Wow.
How long of a train ride was it?
It was overnight, so our plane, this is how perfect the timing was. Our plane like landed at 6, and we're doing international. By the time we got out, it was like 7:30, 8 o'clock. So we had 2 hours to get to Union Station, and there's a train, or there's a bus, the Flyaway, from LAX that goes to Union Station, and it's like $7 per person. We took that there. Our train was at 10, and we woke up. It's overnight, so it's 10 a.m. or 10 p.m., and then we get to Phoenix. It's technically like outside of Phoenix, and it drops. It's supposed to get there at 6 a.m., but it usually is delayed by an hour or two. Yeah, the one in Maricopa, the city of Maricopa.
That's sweet. Okay, I like these ideas that we're talking about, like having this nice variety of options, right? And being able to figure out what is the best trip for me. Jen mentions people having a fear of flying might be able to realize that they have additional options available to them, right? Jen also says, that's clever. I tried to rent a car one way between YYC and YEG, Calgary and Edmonton, because I wouldn't need the car while there. And the prices were bonkers. They upcharge a lot when they don't need the car to travel one way. And yeah. So having a variety of options. And Jen, don't worry, we're going to get you that train, and then we can just take the train to Edmonton like civilized people.
Yeah,
Well,
no
that'd
kidding.
be nice.
I've got something related. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but it was the 60th year anniversary of the Japanese Shinkansen, and they've celebrated 0 deaths in those 60 years of the high-speed bullet train in Japan. And here I'm sharing it on the screen as a video I took while I was on the Shinkansen in Japan, watching
You
Alex's
watched
YouTube
my
video
while on the Shinkansen?
while on the Shinkansen. And then as I was
Incredible.
about to get a great shot, we go by this sound wall. But isn't that amazing? That's incredible. You can
That
imagine
is
that. Like
incredible.
60 years, and how safe it is. They accounted for 0 deaths in 60 years of the bullet train in Japan. It's incredible.
That is incredible, man. We could be doing so much better than we are.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic. I remain optimistic. We're gonna build a bright future here. We just have to keep advocating for it and keep chatting with people about it. But Nick, you have a news story you want to share with us?
I do. I've kept this a bit secret. These guys don't know what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to play a little Jeopardy right now. So you guys are the contestants as well as the people in the live chat right now. So please, first person to get it right, you win. What do you get? I don't know. Bragging rights, I guess. Anyway, so you got to answer this in the form of a question. One of the most common occupational health hazards: increased risk of heart attack, hypertensive heart disease, ischemic heart disease, high blood pressure, stroke, coronary heart disease, cognitive impacts on attention, memory, cognitive development in children, sleep disturbances, and mental health, increases in stress, and rates of depression. Anybody?
What is living near a highway?
This is associated with this. Absolutely. I'll give you one more hint. One more hint, people. It's associated with hearing loss.
What is
Noise,
trucking?
road noise.
Noise, yes. Noise. We had it here. Great. So this is coming from the Vancouver Sun, and it's about noise pollution. So there was a meeting. This is of the Union of BC Municipalities, came together in Port Moody just a couple weeks ago to talk about the feasibility of putting noise cameras in our cities. So what they've suggested is a pilot where we can put in these noise cameras to detect cars that are going by and just emitting way too much noise, which is, I think, is a good idea to at least test. And the way that they've kind of angled this is to say, hey, it's just to try it out, just to see how it goes, which I think is fantastic. And I think the response to this usually is a yes. Most people think that this is a good idea. Now, I know this has been tested in, I think, Edmonton and Calgary already. Do you know if that's the
I
case?
don't know anything
I've
about
heard
it.
in Edmonton, at least. So the idea is basically to give fines to people who are disobeying the law already, generally to like catch people who are modifying their cars. And I think it's pretty lenient already. I think in BC, if a police officer catches someone who they believe is going over the limit, they basically give them 30 days to come back and prove that they fixed it. If they haven't, then they get a $109 fine, which I think is just the tiniest slap on the wrist imaginable, considering how many things are associated with noise pollution that we get from cars. It's unbelievable how much it actually affects people in their regular lives. It's something I have to deal with every day. Anybody who living in a city in North America deals with it, I'm sure, on some level. So I think this is a fantastic idea. If they actually go through with it and make this widespread, this could make our cities much more livable, much quieter, much more friendly to just walk around, which is something I would love. I think most people would love that. Now, $109, I think that's a bit shallow for a fine as far as it goes, but I think that's something that can be looked at down the road. But like, I have a question though, when it comes to stock cars, because I would guess that there's a lot of vehicles that even in their stock state go beyond that. Whose responsibility is that? Is it the manufacturer or is it the owner? That's just an open question. I don't know. Nobody takes it. That's fine. I'm just rambling here.
I want to hear some of Jamie's thoughts here.
I live downtown. I'm on the 22nd floor, and I don't hear anything because modern construction, the buildings, you don't really hear anything outside. The only thing I hear is people just revving their engines as loud as they can down Central. And it's just insane. I'm like, I can't hear anything except these really loud cars. That it's not like they're doing it they're purposely doing this. And it's just like it's the only thing that annoys me. And like I can be walking downtown having a conversation, and all you do, you just see someone with even a motorcycle or a lifted truck just revs their engine as loud as they can, and you have to just wait a second because you can't finish your conversation. I agree with you, Nick. I want more. I honestly, part of the neighborhood association thing I've been trying to do, like that's one of the things I can see if we can work on getting in our downtown, is because a lot of our neighbors just have cars just revving down at middle of the night. It's not like they're doing this during the day. It's the middle of the night, which is even worse.
I think that's mainly what it's targeted at, right? Is people ripping down the street. Like I've been scared, like startled from loud cars going by in the night sometimes, because if we can't have our windows open, that's just not feasible for us, especially in the summer. It makes it really difficult. But yeah, I think that's what they're really aiming it for. During the day, the regular noise on the street, I don't think this is what they're targeting, at least not yet, because like, I don't know if that's more difficult with having, 4 lanes of traffic and all the noise that's going on. How do you target one particular car? I'm not sure, but yeah, again, this is not for that, even though I think that is also a very, very real problem.
Yeah.
All of that noise.
I just don't know who the sound benefits. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like,
well, I think, did you ever watch Not Just Bikes videos? Cities Aren't Loud, Cars Are Loud.
Yeah.
And at the end, he was talking about the benefits of this. He said, cargo wee or something like that. I think it's fun for the person inside, I guess.
I think
it can be.
When you're younger, I could understand that mindset, but like, I just like I didn't even know where I could say, like, with speeding, you can at least tell them to go to a racetrack. With loud cars, like, what do you tell people to do? Like, go to the country road and disrupt nature, because like that disrupts a lot of animal sleeping behaviors when there's loud cars in the middle of the night, and rural farmers can still hear those revving engines on like country roads. So it's like it doesn't there's nothing you can argue with that. Like it's just annoying.
It's all widespread. We've talked about this on this podcast too. Is like, it's not even just the car that makes the loud noise. It's now the emergency services vehicles that have to have really loud systems and alarms and sirens so that people inside their cocoons can hear it. Car horns are extremely loud. We know that too. We've talked about, having a car horn inside just as loud as it is outside, because it is very, very scary. If you're on a bike or walking, it can be very, very loud. And again, it just all encompasses make it everything louder. It's like the loudness wars in music back in the day, just like pushing the limits, and everybody's just fighting each other to be the loudest.
I think that fighting each other point, it's interesting because when you are driving your vehicle, you are very isolated from all of the external factors, right? You have your air filter that protects you from the fumes that are coming from the car in front of you. You have your soundproofing, right? Whether that's through active noise cancellation that you see in some of newer vehicles, or that's literally just like a proper seal on your doors. The difference between my car, the car that I had a broken seal on one of the doors. And so I could hear way more road noise than I could from anybody else. And so if I'm driving, when I was road tripping, I would have the music turned up super, super loud, right? So that I could hear it over the road noise. And but then, of course, what you're talking about with sirens, like if there was an emergency vehicle coming up behind me, but I had my music blasting, would I be able to hear that? So I think these like considerations and creating a world where we can be aware of the things going on around us, it's critical. And I think we do need to have a conversation about that, and just getting the data, collecting the data of how loud are our streets and what is that effect on our health. I think that's going to be the thing that helps us move forward with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm hoping this actually passes. This was an ask for the government. Now we're about to have an election in a couple weeks, so depends on who gets voted in. One way, I don't think they're going to do it. The other one, I think it's more of a possibility, especially with some of the MLAs who are running right now. But yeah, that is what it is.
Before we move on to Jamie's story, I just want to share Jen's comment here. She says, it makes me think of clicking a pen. Super satisfying for the clicker, but super annoying for everyone else. And yeah, it can be. Jamie, you've got a story for us.
Yeah, so we in Phoenix, as I was mentioning earlier, we don't have direct rail. You actually have to go 30 miles outside of the downtown area to even catch the rail. And it's been like that since 1993. There was actually, I don't want to say terrorist attack, but there was a purposeful derailment on one of the tracks, and they haven't fixed it, and they just been diverting the tracks to the city of Maricopa. But in the last year, and thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure bill, passenger rail between Phoenix and Tucson have been in the work. So they are in the process of rerouting the Sunset Limited back up to the station, which is actually probably from my apartment is less than a 10-minute walk to get there, which was really annoying when you have to like get an Uber or like call my brother to pick me up 30 miles away from downtown when the train could have just gone there. And the station, and this is a big problem with the Maricopa station, is you have to actually stop 3 times to get the train because the platform is not up to standards. So you have to get the crew off, you got to get the baggage, and then you got to get passengers off. So it takes a long time to actually deboard the train. Where with this new plan that they're looking at, you would be able to just go to the downtown area and just have one stop. So we've been getting funding from it. Arizona Department of Transportation is evaluating. They have a couple plans. They're in stage 1 of 6 steps. And by the end of this year, they should be in stage 2, which would be in spring 2025. And the idea is to create a couple trips a day, I think about 6 in one day. And it would connect we have a suburb called Goodyear, which is a bedroom community where it's just housing and HOA communities like back to back. But it would essentially start there, and then it would move into downtown, go to Gilbert, and connect to a couple regional cities, and then start heading down to Tucson. So this is a huge opportunity for us to really get our passenger rail. And we're still figuring out who's going to pay for it, but we did receive the $500,000 to do the study and look at what we need to do next.
That's
awesome.
Super exciting. Yeah. I'm really, really stoked for you guys. So 6 trips a day between Phoenix and Phoenix and Tucson. That's the...
Yeah. I'm trying to see the exact amount. It was around that number 6. Trying to see in the article if I can see anything that had more onto it. No, I don't see, but it was around that number. It would be more than one daily trip, which is really important for us.
That's sweet. That is fantastic. And actually being in the city, because I think so there's like a few benefits to rail over other modes of transportation, right? Every mode of transportation has its place, right? I don't expect to be able to take a train from Calgary to Amsterdam, right? I do, however, think it should be possible to take a train from Calgary to Toronto, though I don't necessarily think that that's like a choice that I would make, right? Like, I think the network should exist, but if I was making the trip from Calgary to Toronto, I would probably fly, right? So I think having a variety of train, airplane, automobile, bicycle, however you want to get around, I think you should be able to make that decision for that trip. And one of the benefits with rail travel is that the on and off is so much easier than a plane, right? You have far more doors per passenger on a train than you do on a plane, right? On a plane, you have one door that everybody goes in that door, everybody comes out that door, right? And then you have your luggage claim is different and all of those things. Security is different. But on a train, it's not. And it sounds like right now, the system that you have is almost more complicated than even at an airport, because okay, well, first the luggage is going to come off, and then we have to move the train up a little bit to do the crew, and then we'll move the train up a little bit to get the passengers off, right? Like, that is not how any other mode of transportation works, and that is not how rail travel is supposed to work. So I think that alone is just a really exciting part of this project.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, like you said, Alex, like we're not talking about going across the world in a train, but regional rail is the real stuff. And here you have a city pair in Arizona that seems like a no-brainer that you could connect more readily and have it actually accessible. Would you say 30 minutes out of town that you had to go to actually get on the train?
30 miles, just
30 miles, okay.
yeah.
Not 30 minutes, yeah.
So
which
more
is crazy.
More than 30 minutes to get there.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I'm like envious because it seems like the United States is actually getting its act in order in some ways with trains. Like they're actually building stuff, and there is actually a plan in place where in the next 10 to 20 years there's going to be some kind of network, which is just awesome. Meanwhile, in Canada, we're dragging our feet for the most part.
I think it's competitive, though. I mean, it's back in the 60s when they were doing research on trains and high-speed trains, it was because of Japan pushing their limits on what they were doing with trains. So it really forced Europe and the U.S. To really figure out, like, how can we have fast trains? Unfortunately, we didn't really get the good end of that. I think the best we got was, like, the auto train. I know the auto train came out of that study. It was like, the 1965... I forget the exact act, but there was an act to really study high-speed rails back in the day. And one of the things that came out of that was the Amtrak auto train that takes you from near Washington, D.C. all the way down to Florida, and you can bring your car on the train and go all the way down to Florida.
Right. Yeah, I think it's interesting that we've been talking about this stuff, right? It's always been a conversation, and I think the bottom line of it is that it's a choice to act, right? It's a choice to do something about it. And I'm glad that this conversation is finally reaching a point where people are saying, yeah, like, let's actually do that. And the political will is there, not just with the populace, but also with the politicians and with the businesses, right? Like, people are saying, okay, like, we're ready for trains in North America again. Finally, we're coming back to passenger rail. And it's got me optimistic. Yeah, I'm super stoked. How many people will this serve? Like, how many people live in Phoenix and how many people live in Tucson, seeing as these are kind of the anchoring points, I'm assuming, of this?
Phoenix itself it's the 5th largest city, but let me see it. The metro is a little bit more. Phoenix
Tucson.
is like 1.7 million, just Phoenix, and then the metro is populate 4.85 million in the Phoenix metro, and then Tucson is a little bit smaller. It's like 600,000, but there's a lot of trips in between that people take just for school. Some people live in Phoenix, and occasionally they'll come back for the weekend because they go to the University of Arizona in Tucson. Yeah, it's a little bit, yeah. And there's also other areas that people connect from Tucson, like a lot of like Bisbee. There's a lot of smaller towns in that area that connects, that people go to Tucson for the larger city amenities.
Yeah, this really seems like a no-brainer train. So I'm stoked to see how this comes out. Nick, you got a thought there?
Well, I was just looking at a map of Arizona, and the counties are huge.
Yeah, when I was younger, I didn't realize like counties are supposed to be a little bit smaller. I was just always so used to like the counties being large, and we only have a couple. And from what I understand is, since we were a newly formed state, we had different modes of transportation when we became a state. So on our East Coast side, you had a lot of smaller counties because a day's trip on a horse was like the idea time frame of a county that you wanted to be able to get to like the courts and all that stuff. Whereas the transportation methods in the West started, it's not just Arizona. I know California also has like big county districts as well.
And there's also like I think it's also there's a lot of federal land and it is quite interesting. Also, just the way that all of it was formed is quite fascinating. Jamie, do you have a final thought on this story before we move on to some questions for you?
Yeah. So this ties into your talk about transit and having options. The way I see it is having a diverse portfolio of transportation option is really important because why don't you invest all your money into one certain stock, right? That's a bad idea, because what if that something fails or temporarily it's not doing well, right? So you got to consider those options. And that's how I view our transportation system in our cities. Transportation systems fail. They fail all the time. But when you have other options, and I'll tell a story that actually happened in Phoenix, where they had to rely on the train, the very same line that we're talking about, because believe it or not, we have rivers. Sometimes we have rivers. Sometimes, but one of the rivers in Tempe, they dammed it up. It's called Tempe Town Lake now, but before it was like a free-flowing river. And during our monsoon season, it actually collapsed the bridge for cars, so people could not get to work from Phoenix to Tempe. There was no other option besides the train bridge. So the governor, I believe it was the governor at the time, enacted a special train for that entire week until there was repairs done and the river was accessible by car again. But it was so popular, they called it the Sardine Express because it was packed with people going from downtown Phoenix to Tempe. But like, imagine if we didn't have that service, and that could always happen again. Nothing is for certain. But if that was to happen again, we don't have that line anymore. So what would we do? We'd be stranded.
Yeah, I think that's a great insight. It's about redundancies in the system, allowing people to get around in a variety of modes. And I think that it's not just for when the infrastructure fails us, but for when maybe we have something that discontinues our ability to drive or ride a bike or take the train, right? Like, there are a variety of reasons for people making the decisions that they do on how they get around a city, whether it's based on their physical health, their mental health, their personal comfort, or convenience, speed, all of these things contribute to us making decisions how we get around. And that can result in us choosing to go by train, by bus, by bike, by car, by foot, whatever it is. So I like that. Well, let's get on to some questions for you. We have a couple sent in, one from Skitch and one from Jen. But the question I always like to start off with for our guests is, how did you get into urbanism? How did you get into these ideas of mobility, freedom, and walkable spaces, things like that? Tell us your story here.
Do you want to go first, Nick?
No, this
is
for
all
me.
you, Jamie.
Oh, okay.
This is just for you.
Well, it goes back. I think younger, I was the typical person playing like SimCity. I was playing SimCity 4 Rush Hour, building my cities, and I think that kind of what spawned my interest in city planning. And then 2015 is when I started going into college. Keep in mind, when I was younger, I was always biking everywhere. I just never thought about infrastructure. I was just taking the canals everywhere because that's where cars weren't. So I just always enjoyed traveling by bike. Fast forward to when I was going to college. I was going to college for business. And my first year, I took a class called Sustainable Cities because you need an elective for business. So I took that, and I was super interested. I even won a contest. I got second place. By like Hartford Insurance for one of the ideas I had. It was called Life Tower. Basically, I was trying to figure out cemeteries take up a lot of space and how we can better utilize cemeteries in our cities and make it more publicly available space. So that happened, and then that same year when it came up to finals week, I was actually I was hit by a wrong way driver on the highway. It was the last time I was hit on by a girl before my current girlfriend, Skitch. She hates that joke. She hates that joke very much. But yeah, so I was not able to walk. I was in a wheelchair for many months. And then it got me started to think about infrastructure. And I was taking the bus, and I was like, I hate taking the bus because when you're in a wheelchair on a bus, well, sometimes they just go right past you if you're in a wheelchair. And other times you don't feel like the sense of independence that you want to, and the bus has to take forever, stop, kneel down, because there's no level boarding. Where it's like when I would take the light rail, it was a little bit more reasonable because it's just like you just feel a lot more, you feel better with yourself that you can just roll right on the light rail. And so after all that happened, I got a job at Starbucks, and I started doing ASU. They paid for my college, and I started switching my major to urban planning and sustainability. So I have my degrees in sustainability with a focus on urban dynamics, and then I have a minor in urban planning. So then I got really just involved with it. And then I started attending a lot of events in like 2019 and 18 with trying to save our light rail. They constantly, like every couple of years, they try to kill our light rail in Phoenix, and then we always somehow make it back and support the light rail.
That's awesome. I mean, not awesome that you got hit by a car.
It's okay. I was in a 2-day coma, and my family were putting like little pizza images and like of what I was thinking while I was in a coma.
That's pretty funny, actually. Yeah, I think this happens to a lot of people. Actually, they have that kind of moment where they're like, "Holy shit, this stuff is actually important," because now I'm faced with that, right? Yeah, and you see it. I see it every day. There are a few bus routes that I take frequently where there are regularly people on there using mobility aids, whether that's a wheelchair or a walker or even a cane, right? And the bus does kneel down, and most of our buses actually, I think, have ramps on them as well that come down. But sometimes the bus stop doesn't have like enough space, or where the bus decided to stop, there's not enough space for the ramp to come down properly, so they have to move around. And so what you're talking about, this whole experience of navigating the city in this different way, you start realizing like, oh, there are like these little things that are not a big deal to most people, but they are actually a big deal, and they could be a big deal to most people because you never know when something like that might happen to you. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that with us. Our next question comes from Skitch. Nick, do you want to read this one?
Yeah. What is your favorite topic you've covered in a blog or a video?
I was really loving, I did a research on leading pedestrian intervals. So I did a video on that, and then I did a blog on it, an accompanying blog, because I was just trying to look at like pedestrian safety, and I've heard of leading pedestrian intervals, but then I really did the research, and I was like, you're telling me all they got to do is just reprogram the light? Like, they just got to reprogram the light. That's it. And there's a cost to it, but it's essentially just paying the person to go out there and reprogram the light. And I was just sitting there. I was like, this is it. We just had to reprogram this light. So now in my community, I kind of been bringing that up a lot more in our meetings, and in our next Vision Zero meeting, we have that as an agenda item, because I was just like, bro, all you got to do is reprogram the light. So that was even the title of the video was, bro, just reprogram my light. Like that's it. That's all they have to do. And it's a huge life-saving change that you can do. You can save between 13% to 60% from fatalities with a change in LPIs. They're also called LPIs. And it gives pedestrians and cyclists a head start, a 3 to 7 second head start. You can even go up to 10 seconds. And it's a huge game changer. We had a couple down here, but they're like half-assed leading pedestrians. Like, they only work during the daytime for certain directions. So a good one, usually both sides of the intersection work. And they don't stop at night, which was weird. I guess they don't think, because we're in a downtown area, so it's like, I think they assume that people just don't walk downtown after night. But,
Is it like a lively place at night?
Oh yeah, it's very lively. It's sometimes,
okay,
it gets busy down here. We have
That's
a lot
weird.
we have a lot of events, but I think there's the mindset is, the government worker, because it's all near like the police, the old police headquarters, and near City Hall is where we have our LPIs.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I love that topic because, again, like you said, it's such an easy thing to implement, but it can actually make a huge difference. Yeah. It's something we're seeing a lot more in cities. I know here in Vancouver we have a few now, but they're not as widespread as I think they should be, at least only in the very downtown areas, even though, Vancouver is very urbanized. But That's awesome. We do have one more question here before we get into our just regular listener mail question. This is coming from Jen in the chat. She says, what's the furthest you've personally traveled by train?
So back in October 2021, I did the entire United States in a loop. I got the U.S. I did the U.S. Rail Pass. So I went from Maricopa to L.A. to Emeryville, which is the San Francisco stop. I went from there. I went to Glenwood Springs. I had a cousin that lived there, and then I went from Glenwood Springs to Denver to Chicago to New York, New York to DC, DC to New Orleans, and New Orleans back to Maricopa.
Wow.
I did this in about 2.5 weeks. So I didn't pay for a lot of places to sleep because half the time I was on the train and I was sleeping overnight there were coach sections, but at that time it was still around COVID time. It was 2021, so people I think were still hesitant to use the train. There was never anyone near me, next to me.
That's amazing. So you got
That
your
is
own space
amazing.
for cheap. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So 2.5 weeks, is that what you said?
Yeah, about 2.5 weeks.
That's wild. So did you visit places you had never been before, like any particular cities?
First time in San Francisco. I stayed in a hostel there, so I spent like $100 for 2 nights. It wasn't bad at all. And then I got to see San Francisco. It was my first time. I think all the places I went to except Chicago, I've never been before.
Oh, that's amazing. That's
so
a
cool.
hell of a trip. You know what? Once you can do it now. You did it obviously, but I feel like once the rail network gets better and better in the United States, it seems like a rites of passage, like that everybody could do. Hey, you get a discounted rail pass. You just graduated high school. Maybe it's free. It's government provided, and then kids can go explore the United States because that's what they do in Europe, right?
Yeah, that's.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Oh no, you can go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
So I think like this idea of being able to travel your country and see your country and see the diversity of people that live here, right? I live in Alberta, so every now and then I hear somebody say something nasty about people in the East, right? Everybody's got opinions, their rival state or rival province, their rival cities, and I think it would be cool if we were able to foster that kind of unity via rail travel, right? If you were able to take your ticket in Vancouver and just be like, you know what, I'm going to go across the country. I'm just going to stop. I'm going to stop in Calgary, and I'm going to stop in Regina, then Winnipeg. Then we're going to head down to Toronto. We're going to check out Montreal, see what that's like, right? And go all the way to the Maritimes too, right? Like to be able to visit the whole country and then come home and be like, yeah, when I was in my 20s, I went and like traveled across Canada. I stayed in hostels along the way, and I saw all this different stuff. And actually, my friend who I met in Montreal, they're actually moving to Calgary now, and then I get to host them and show them around my city, right? I think things like that, permitting people to travel and visit other places. And see like on the ground those places, because I think that's another opportunity that rail travel affords us that flying doesn't. Flying is direct, right? Like I am not when I fly to Ottawa later this month, I am not stopping off in Regina. I'm not really looking at the prairies at all, right? Like it's 4 hours and then I'm there. But I think rail allows us to enjoy the journey and enjoy the beautiful landscapes and people that we have here around us.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do the Canadian rails? So with Amtrak, we did the dining car. I traveled this summer on the train. This time around, we had coach. I found a little cheat to get the dining carts. There's a way you can like bid on the sleepers, and it's a way cheaper. And for some reason, we got it twice in a row. I don't know, but instead of paying like thousands of dollars for a sleeper, we paid maybe like $200, which was a good deal. But anyways, it comes with the dining cart, and in the Amtrak ones, they actually seat you with random people. So the tables fit 4 people. So if it's just you and someone else, you get seated with 2 other people that are completely random. And I have a lot of interesting stories from all the dining cart experiences I've had. I've met people that were comedians in LA. I met this guy that was living in New Mexico, just the most strange journey that he was like watching someone's house. He didn't have a car. He was just ATVing everywhere, especially his trash, because he didn't have trash service. But he had to go get a car for, because he's in a more rural area and he couldn't go on the highway with an ATV. So he actually took the train to go to Omaha to get, not Omaha, one of the cities nearby, and to actually go get a vehicle.
Interesting.
It was
like, yeah, that's like a wild, like, I don't know. It's a way to meet people and interact with people. And I know like some people are like, I don't want to meet people. I'm like, listen, you don't have to talk to people on trains. But as an extrovert, I choose to talk to people on trains because that's something I enjoy. I did mention that in my UK video that I made, because people were probably wondering like, why is this guy talking to everybody on the trains? I'm the problem. Okay, guys, I'm the problem, and I'll readily admit that. In Canada, though, I don't know. I've never taken, other than like municipal local rail. I have never taken transit regionally. I've never taken via rail. Maybe Nick can speak to what that experience is like.
It's been a while, but yeah, when I was in my college days, I definitely took the rail to visit my girlfriend at the time, and at her university. It was a couple cities away, but I don't know what to say about it. It wasn't particularly good. It was affordable for me, who's someone who didn't have a car at the time, but it was fine. It just took a long time. It was really slow. Like a drive that would have taken an hour, maybe an hour and a half, ended up being 2 to 3 hours in the train, which is just ridiculous. And it's still like that. It's because the rails are owned by the freight companies, so they have priority.
Yeah. Austin says, via rail when boarding small stations is pretty nice. The larger stops are kind of painful, and they enforce seating assignments from there.
And they weigh your bags.
Yeah. It's not great. Listen, we're getting some trains in Alberta soon enough. We're going to set the standard. We're going to do a great job, okay? That's my promise to you.
That'll be beautiful.
Yeah, but let's get on to the listener mail here. We've got some good questions that I'm looking forward to getting into. Skitch says, hello, my 3 favorite urbanists. I guess Jamie gets included in that this week, seeing as Ethan's not here. So you're on the list now, Jamie. Congratulations.
Yes.
Skitch likes you. What is the best transit station you've ever been to? What made this station so great compared to others? Nick, let's have you go first.
All right. I kind of mentioned this earlier in the show a bit. So my favorite station that I've been to is actually St. Pancras in London. And the reason why is because it's featured in Harry Potter, even though what's-her-face, who we don't need to talk about on this podcast, wrote the wrong name in the book. She said King's Cross. But she actually meant St. Pancras because that's the one she was thinking about in her head. In the second movie, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, you get to see it when the flying car goes over top of it. It's a beautiful, beautiful building. The inside is fine. It's like whatever, but the outside is really nice.
There's always a line, though, to take that photo. Like, I was thinking about it, and I was like, no, I'm not. I'm just going to go to the city.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. I just kind of like, oh, that's beautiful, and you go do what you want to do. But yeah, it's a nice looking station.
Yeah, they do have some pretty nice stations. I also like the Elizabeth line is quite nice. Like, it's some pretty cool stuff. Jamie, what about you? What's your favorite train station or transit station?
I'm sure I could do a bunch of international ones, but I'm going to do a local one because I don't think you guys are going to expect this from a Phoenix transit station. Well, technically it's Tempe, which is just a nearby city of the metro. I believe it's Rural. I can't think of the station name now, but it's their transit center, Tempe Transit Center. It's next to A Mountain, which is like the ASU, Arizona State University's college, Veterans Way and College. Thank you. They keep renaming it because they keep getting different sponsors for the stadium because they call it the stadium name too. Now it's like Mountain America. So that station actually has a hiking trail directly connected to the station. So as soon as you get off the station, you can go hiking. And it's a reasonable hike. We do transit hiking in our city, so that's one of our favorite stops we go to because you have a bathroom, it's free to use, and it's clean. You have water fountains. You actually have a bike shop called Bike Seller that does bike repair and storage. You have like a convenience store there. You have all the free orbital shuttles, or the shuttles that take you around. They're like a little bit small. The shuttle buses are not quite as big as like a regular bus, but it's a little bit smaller. But they're free and they're more neighborhood circulators. And then you have all the big buses coming through that area. And you also have my favorite bus, which is like the 72 just nearby as well.
That's sweet. I do like that you featured buses in your conversation about transit stations because train stations suck up a lot of the oxygen, but buses are an important part of our transit networks. For me, I'm going to have to say almost any train station in Montreal. When I was there earlier this year, and I want to, so I love, in Calgary, we have very simple train stations. We try to make sure that they're just like ramps up to the platform, easy for accessibility. A few of our older stations have elevators, but they're always broken down, right? That's not great for accessibility when your accessibility feature is always broken. So I do like that. I think one of the major features of Calgary Transit is that we've been able to build rail for pretty low cost. I like that as well. But I liked Montreal's train stations, like actually a lot. They're kind of this fusion of Wes Anderson and brutalism. Let me share my screen with you so that you know what I'm.
Are you talking about like the interior of the metro station? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, like look at this. Okay, can you? So I was recording this. I was like, man, and for the people listening, this is Joliet Station that I'm showing here, and it's yellow tiles. You have the station name right in the center, and then you have these benches here. And I guess I should play the video here. It's just like, and then look, this guy walks into the video, and he sits like right down in the middle. He obviously sees me recording, but it's just like a good vibe. Like I don't know, don't you?
Okay. Yeah, I went there in the summer, right? It was nostalgic, even though I've never had been to Montreal before.
Like, come on, look at this.
It's like a coming of age film. I don't know, like the intro.
100%, right? Here, let me show you a few more shots. You know, like I just like
that one. I love that one.
Look of their transit stations, right? Like Cartier
tall
station,
ceilings
like,
too, right? Really high ceilings inside of the lobby.
Yeah, and one thing that I liked too was they're not as deep as London's stations. When I was in London, you have to go like 100 stories underground, right, to get to these stations down there. And it's crazy. It's crazy. But then in Montreal, there's just like a few escalators to get down there, right? Their trains were also very nice. So I'm gonna say Montreal's stations. Austin in the chat here says Edmonton's Century Park Station, my somewhat unironic favorite station. And Jen says, my favorite station is the downtown Disneyland station. I need to travel more. Let's see. Oh yeah. So yeah, I think, I don't know. I like a good train station. One thing you mentioned buses as well, Jamie. One thing that I'll mention about the buses, the train stations in Montreal, they're like airports. Like a few of them are like airports. They have like wings and corridors, and like this bus goes here and you line up and you wait, and very organized, very, very cool. But yeah. Oh, and Austin says he meant Bay Enterprise, the downtown with all the chrome in Edmonton. But yeah, Nick, do you want to take this next question from Jen here?
Yes, here we go. This is a good one from Jen Hall. North American separated bike infrastructure is slowly increasing, but it often lacks color. If you could choose a color for all North American bike lanes, what color would you choose? Why don't you go, Alex? You can go first.
So here in Calgary, we do green, which works. That's like that's the color that we're used to. So I'm not opposed to continuing to use that. And red is what's done in the Netherlands, and it works great. But red is kind of our color for bus lanes and bus zones. But I kind of think it'd be cool to do blue. I don't know. I think that would be interesting. I wonder what the most like efficient pigment to use is. That's my one question, but that's my thought. Skitch says blue as well, so I feel validated. Jamie, what do you think?
I think with bike lanes, because it's especially if it's separated and it's I really like the two-way tracks because you can just do so many cooler things with it. I would say like just a fun color would be like purple. I feel like put some royalty on the bike lanes.
I love that. Yeah, you feel like a king riding down those bike lanes.
Yeah, I like that idea for sure.
What's your answer, Nick?
I would just choose green because I want it to be consistent. I was racking my brain. I've been to many cities in North America and I can't think of a different color other than green that's been used for bike lanes. Is there other ones? Like I can't even think of them. I'm showing on screen though, this is in Japan. They do use blue in some cities. I think in Kyoto they did. Other places there was a different color, but I don't know if it was green. It wasn't red, but yeah, a lot of blue for sure. But I love the Netherlands because I don't know, the red is like, it's just so like subdued and neutral, and it's not too like aggressive, right? But I don't know. Green is nice because it's vibrant, it's eye catching. It's not particularly nice though. It's not like pretty, but I like consistency. So let's just like stick to one color, whatever gets chosen.
Yeah,
make it universal.
Listen, I think we've already started down the path of green bike lanes, at least here in Calgary. I think. All right, we're rolling with green. Like that's the color we've chosen. But those blue ones, honestly, they looked kind of cute.
They look
like
nice.
I liked the blue too. But yeah. Well, this has been fun, Jamie. I feel like you had an extra thought.
Oh,
there.
have you guys ever seen the solar paneled bike lanes in South Korea?
No.
So
is it like
on the highway?
over?
Yeah, highway probably wasn't the best place to put them because it's just so loud if you're trying to do something like that. But yeah, because it's hot here, and I'm like, how cool would it be if we could get some solar panel shaded bike lanes here? Because you could provide lighting because you would have a power source, and
Yeah.
especially here we have over 300 days of sunniness, so like we would get so much more power, and maybe eventually the infrastructure would pay for itself in more than one way.
Help you keep you cool as well, right? Because it's so freaking hot.
Yeah.
You could have like a great bicycle highway running through the city. Ooh,
Yeah,
that's
we
good
were
idea.
like in the mid 40 degrees Celsius. You guys do Celsius, right? 40 degrees Celsius like yesterday.
That's so hot.
Yeah, it was 113, I think was the high Fahrenheit. It was crazy.
It never gets that hot here in Vancouver. If we get 35,
goodness.
we're like, bro, what's going on?
Well, it's unusual for October to be like this crazy.
Yeah, that's fair. That's crazy.
Yeah, I could never. I'm a fall and spring weather guy.
Yes, it does get cold here. It does get cold, I promise. But this year has just been crazy. And it's like 90 degrees for us is like relatively nice for us because we don't have humidity. Like I was in Georgia and it was 80 degrees and I'm like, this is just insane. I'm sweating more than I would be in Phoenix.
Yeah.
I can't do humidity at all. I was complaining the entire time.
Yeah, my sister's down in Memphis, and it's just like unbelievable what the humidity will do to you. And so
wild.
somebody told me once, they said they'd prefer a humid heat than a dry heat, and I thought they must be crazy.
I don't know what that means.
Because
Doesn't make any sense.
that is not for me. No, thank you, major.
to
No,
sweat.
thank you. But yeah, this has been a great conversation. I'm glad you were able to join us. Ethan is busy with some very important work right now. So I'm glad you were able to fill in for him, Jamie. You're welcome back anytime. This was grand and groovy. I think Nick has something he wants to say at the end here.
I do. It's a mini wugmug of what grinds my gears, and it's something came to mind this morning. The BC party leaders did a debate on the radio this morning. It was like only an hour long. It should have been longer, but it was I'm not even going to say who it is. Doesn't matter. But just to say we should be united in all of this stuff. When we talk about urbanism, we talk about having healthier cities. We talk about having more fiscally responsible cities. It's just, this should be nonpartisan, the things we talk about. Like, it's just crazy. It blows my mind. Like having a candidate argue, the only thing they care about is money, 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 money. And it's like, bro, what are we doing? Like spending so much money on car infrastructure that is so inefficient. It's just crazy to me that it's partisan. It's really sad. It's just really sad. I just wanted to make a note of that, but
Yet you're on the dot with that. Like I can bring it if I join another time, but like our state DOT needs $160+ billion to maintain our highways by 2050.
yeah, that's insane.
Wow.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Like, what are we
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
It's
and
sad.
and I do want to note that although there seem to be, for some reason, some political leaders who decide to make this stuff a wedge issue. I think when you're on the ground, when you talk to real life human beings, no matter how they decide to fall on the political spectrum, on other issues, I think most people agree that yes, our streets should be safer. Yes, there should be robust transit options, including bicycles, including scooters, including walking, including driving, including buses, including trains. All of these things matter. And so I think when we get out there and we actually talk to the real human beings who live next door to us, when we turn off the, whatever rage bait that we're watching that day, as entertaining as it can be, when we shut all that stuff off and we just talk to our neighbor and we say, hey, wouldn't it be nice if it was safer and more comfortable for our kids to walk to school? Wouldn't it be nice if we had a local coffee shop that we could just meet up at, that we could just walk there and enjoy some time in a third place? Wouldn't it be nice to have more libraries around me? Wouldn't it be nice to have wider sidewalks? Wouldn't it be great if we had more protected infrastructure? Wouldn't it be great if we had more trees in our neighborhood, right? All of these things that make these places great to live. Wouldn't that be nice? Mm-hmm. And I think most people would agree on a lot of the things that we talk about on how we can make that happen. And so as much as some people try to make this a partisan issue, it is not a partisan issue. I have friends across the political spectrum who love what we're talking about here and who are excited to be engaged and make our neighborhoods better places to live. So thanks for joining us, Jamie. Do you want to tell the good people where they can find your work?
Yeah, so if you can look up my website, urbanavenues.city. I have my blogs there, all my podcasts. I have a podcast I just started called Urbanism by Chance. So the idea behind that is I've been picking people in my community that I'm interviewing that kind of how we in the beginning were kind of explaining my background and what got me into urbanism. But I'm doing it to people that might not consider themselves urbanism. I had an episode with one of my former roommates. She would probably consider herself more urbanist now, but like when we first lived together, I was always like convincing her to take the bus into work, and she finally started doing it, and then she ended up scootering to the park and ride instead of driving, and her car, so many mileage of wear and tear was saved by doing that, and she's just been so happy, and she's feels a lot better mentally taking the transit taking transit now, and will consider that as an option. But stories like that, I've been trying to get people in. I have about like 4 or 5 more interviews I have lined up, but it's a lot of work because I do a blog component to it, so people can also read a blog on them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I'll let you know as well before we fully wrap up. Think of like a catchphrase you want to use at the end of this thing. Nick and I each have one. I'm feet first. Nick is, what do you say?
2 wheels good.
2 wheels good. And Ethan always says car bad, train good. And so you can think of your own catchphrase you want to use as we wrap up here. But Nick, where can we find you?
Oh, you know where you can find me. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Threads at Nick the Door. And I just want to say thank you for everybody for joining us today. And thank you, Jamie, for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking. But Alex, why don't you share your wonderful ats?
You can find me at Humane Cities on YouTube and Instagram, and on Threads and Instagram at Alex Williams YYC. Stay tuned. I have some cool stuff happening. I promise. But with that, I'll let you do your catchphrase. Do you have a catchphrase, Jamie?
Oh yes, ride a mile, smile the while.
2 wheels good.
Ride a mile, smile a while. I like that. 2 wheels good. Nick said it. I'm sorry I stepped on that audio. But feet first. See ya.
I'm gonna fix that in post.
Yeah.